Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Skylar and this is Scarlet Skylar Official. Today we are going to be reviewing the movie Boneyard.
Approximately 6 weeks ago, one of our concerned citizens came across human remains while walking a dog. We discovered the remains of 11 women and one unborn child.
In the last vlog, I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I was able to attend the screening party for the movie, and I got to be with my family, meet other families, do some interviews and things like that. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'm gonna go ahead and link it right here and in the description below, so check that out if you haven't. To give you a quick recap of the movie, it is inspired by the true crime events that took place in 2009 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where a woman walking her dog had found a human bone that led to the uncovering of a large group of women. Now, what do I have to do with it? One of those victims was my mother, and her name was Veronica Romero. She was the 7th victim identified among the women that were found. So this movie held a pretty special place for me and my family and the other families out there as well. It started off, the first thing I heard leaving the theaters after everybody watched it was, it was good. I feel like everybody said this, but nobody really elaborated on what they meant when they said it was good. So I started asking more questions. I started asking, what exactly do people mean when they say it's good? What I had heard in response to this question was, it was good in terms of creativity, as far as where do you take an unsolved murder and make it into a movie when it has no ending. So the creativity on that aspect was actually very good from what I've heard. Another thing that I had heard is that all the key points that needed to be hit were hit in terms of bringing justice back and humanizing the victims and things like that. So that was a very good positive thing that I heard from this movie. Now this is where we dive into a little bit more of the negative feedback and the responses that I have to those. So one of the first things that I heard even before the movie was released was that they didn't tell the families. I went online and I was able to see how many people had opinions about this specifically, and in response to that, it was kind of crazy to me because how would they know? Like, they're not talking to me. I don't know who else they're talking to, but most people aren't talking to me, at least the ones I read online. And although not all the families were contacted, it doesn't mean that the efforts were not made in looking for them. It is a lot more difficult to find information for people from 2009 when the internet wasn't really that large. So the efforts were being made, and we're hoping that they reach out after they see something like my video or any other video, or we see them commenting amongst things online, and then that's when we reach out and we try to find them. So the efforts are still being made even after the movie's been put out. There were indeed families out there that were surprised by the news of a major motion picture coming out about all of this, and some of them were not contacted before the movie was released. But at this point in time, I cannot speak for them all, but I do know that the people that I have talked to that have had those opinions have adjusted those opinions, and along the way, it more so turned into the concern being about the portrayal of the girls. So this was prior to the movie coming out. A lot of the women that were out on the mesa that were found were prostitutes or were involved in drugs and things like that. And unfortunately, that's just the way it went. A lot of the girls were born in the 70s. The 70s was a horrible drug epidemic, and it just kind of floated down into the generation that had me and my siblings and a lot of the other children that were out. Our concern was because we know them as individuals, and we knew that they had more to them than just the mistakes that they made as teenagers and adults growing up. We knew that they had already been represented in a way that was pretty shocking to us in the news even before the movie came out. It was just the label that those women had.
So the first course of action by detectives was to identify any links between the victims. But other than the final two girls to be identified, 15-year-old Jamie Barella and her cousin, 27-year-old Evelyn Salazar, none of the victims seemed to share a personal relationship. It seemed like all the victims were completely separate. Though they didn't know each other directly, they did, however, share common lifestyles that would categorize them as being, quote, high risk, unquote. Basically, you know where this is going. They all were involved in drugs and sex work. Well, all except Jamie Barella, the 15-year-old.
They were prostitutes and drug addicts, and that was something that was hard for all of us to deal with. It was a negative portrayal of someone that we truly loved who had just died. And so that carried on into this film as well. That leads me into the actual portrayal of the girls in the movie itself. Now, I'm not sure if you had seen it, but in the beginning they did a flash of all of the actresses that represented each of these women, and a lot of people had responded to me and had told me, you know, they were disappointed with the fact that there wasn't enough Latina representation among those actresses, because these women were Latina themselves. Although I totally understand that, I did like the way that they were represented, because it did sort of humanize them in a way where they weren't prostitutes and drug addicts in these photos. They weren't prison photos that were represented in the lineup that they did. It was actually quite beautiful, and I appreciated it, whether or not there was Latina representation in it enough or not for the people. I also heard that the girls weren't the main focus of the film, and that is very accurate. It wasn't really revolved around the girls and what they had been dealing with prior to their murder. What I have to say in return to that is that it's really hard to find information about these girls, because the families were never questioned in a way that humanized them enough to be portrayed in a movie. So I wouldn't want someone to try to represent my mother and completely get it wrong if they do not know. So I appreciated that it wasn't a focus, and that it really kind of stayed away from that and made the representation a lot better. Speaking of representation, next on our list is the representation of New Mexico. Believe it or not, one of the first things that people really opened up when I started to question them about was the fact that it was not filmed in Albuquerque. And how do they know this? Palm trees. Everybody knows that there are no palm trees in Albuquerque. It is more so a thing in Arizona, all the way closer to California, but it is not something that is common at all in New Mexico. So that was one of the things that people were upset with, and they felt like there could have been more effort on that. And me, having moved away from Albuquerque and living in Arizona now, I see palm trees everywhere. My brain didn't even register the fact that there were palm trees in there. So I totally understood people's points on that. Although it can't really change now. I do like the setting regardless, because it wasn't like my main focus. It was just something that people that live there every day had noticed. Other people have told me that they wanted more Burqueño representation. So not just with the palm trees being out of place, but with things that kind of represent New Mexico in ways of symbolism. Like there's a whole bunch of tribal art all around New Mexico. There's street art that's pretty specific, and there's a lot of like Mexican restaurants. They didn't really capture that, is what they felt. And although these criticisms come way after the fact that the movie's been filmed, it's been out, it is left select theaters, and now it is available solely on your streaming platforms, it's a little too late to go back. But I wanted to get their input in here anyway, because it is a movie and we love reviews. Next on our list, people had strong opinions about the cast. I could not believe it. I went on the internet and I was looking to see what other people were saying about it, people that weren't around me immediately, and people's opinions of the actors in this movie blew me away. I just couldn't believe the things that they were saying. But I'll try to touch on some points, and we're gonna start with Mel Gibson. A lot of comments say that he was rushing through the movie. Another one was saying that he looked really tired, like he had just been up drinking coffee for hours on end before coming to set. I felt that played more so into his character. That's who he was in the movie. He was a disheveled detective, so it was, for me, I felt the right representation for the character that he was playing. Another point they wanted to touch on is that Mel Gibson is one of those characters that you can get emotionally attached to. And in this one, I guess people didn't feel that emotional connection with him as much as they wanted to. And that's totally okay. We still love that. I still loved it. I felt an emotional connection. I don't know what y'all are talking about. But next on the list is 50 Cent. I heard this a lot, even during the movie itself, while I was there. After the fact, through messages, through comments, people were saying that 50 Cent himself was not really in the movie. They felt that his screen time was not enough for the way that he was portrayed in the trailers, and they felt that his lines were really mumbled and stumbled through. A lot of opinions before the movie came out were more so aimed at the fact that it's 50 Cent playing a cop. So I don't really know. I feel like people would just pick on him regardless, so we'll leave that there. And last on our list of actors that they had opinions about, Brian Van Holt. A lot of the comments I read had said that they felt like he carried the entire movie. They felt like he was the one that was really showing how everything worked, like nobody really talked that much except him, things like that. I cannot see what they're talking about, although I feel like I can see where they're saying that 50 Cent wasn't in it as much. With Brian Van Holt, I felt like it was very even between him and the other characters, but I might be wrong. I definitely want to know what you guys think down in the comments below, so please let me know. Last but not least, on the cast itself, this was one thing that I read and I heard a lot, which was there wasn't enough Hispanic representation on the police force itself. They felt as though the representation of the Burqueños really should have played at least on the police force, because they felt that overall the police force is Hispanic. I felt that the cast was diverse as far as the plot of the detectives coming in from out of state, and although there wasn't a Hispanic cop on the task force itself, I feel like it was a pretty accurate representation, although I'm not entirely sure. I do know that 50 Cent was supposed to be the portrayal of one of the police sergeants that had worked on the case. I am not sure. I have only ever met one detective that has worked on this case, although there have been many attempts where I have tried to reach out to anybody that has worked on the case. It has been unsuccessful. So I can't say whether or not the representation is accurate or not. Our next point is everybody's opinions on the plot. The spew of opinions about this plot is something I did not expect, honestly. Really didn't expect it. Some of the things that I heard was that it felt rushed, that it was too slow, that basically overall the pace was uneven. And although I can see what people are talking about as far as the rush, the slowdown, the rush, the slowdown, it is hard to portray multiple points of views and get that same story across if you don't know the story, if you know what I mean. Again, this was an unsolved murder in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Nobody knows who it is. This is all the theories that were lined up initially for all of us to see in plain sight in a movie what it looks like. The next I've heard that is with this cast, they honestly wanted the main character cast to be, instead of cast as the good guys on the police force, to be cast as villains. They felt as though if they were portrayed as a villain, it would have kept people's interest a lot longer. They felt as though the villain should have matched the good guy. It should have evened itself out and it made itself more psychologically thrilling because people would root for one guy and root for the other guy. I thought that was an interesting point of view. I had never thought to put them in the villain spot, and I wanted to put that in here. As we near the end, we're going to be talking about that itself, the ending. What I had read about the ending was that people felt like there wasn't really one. I would say that those opinions were expected because this is actually the reality that we live in as the families of the victims. In that way, it kind of left you feeling the same way that we felt. And I felt that that was powerful for me. And I'm not sure if other people had seen that in that way, but in that sense, I felt like at that point somebody out there would kind of relate to how we feel. Now, my overall opinion of the whole entire thing was that, one, I actually really enjoyed the movie, and I enjoyed making all the content that I have surrounding this movie, and I have had a lot of privileges to meet the writers and understand their point of views and things like that. I do want to say that I feel that this movie overall did the justice that it needed to do for now. I can see everybody's points, I can see where some of them are valid, and I do appreciate everybody giving them to me and letting me make this video. At the end of the day, with those negative opinions out on the internet, I know that the movie is doing what it is supposed to do, which is bring more eyes and more conversations back to the topic at hand. What's next for us is that there's going to be a documentary that is going to take place. This is what people have been screaming for in the comments about this movie, is that if they wanted to represent this case, they would make a documentary instead. And well, guess what? It has been in the making, and we are working on that currently. So what this means for us is that we are going to be speaking about all of this and giving as much life to the women as possible, and hopefully getting those tips back to us so we can do more investigating ourselves. That is something that we've never had the opportunity to do outside of local news channels. So I'm super excited for this, and I cannot wait to share it with you. If you are a family member of another victim out there that was found on the Mesa, whether you're a cousin, a sister, an aunt, a brother, a child, a mother, a grandmother, please reach out to me, as we are in the works of trying to find who you are and spark conversations that need to be sparked about all of this, because we do understand that seeing all of the media exposure about this and not having your voice heard can hurt. I know I don't want anybody out there that is in the same situation as me to feel that way. So please feel free to reach out to me if you feel safer talking to me about this. For the news about my channel, I'm actually going to be taking a break. I'm going to be taking a huge social media hiatus, a blackout if you will, and I'm going to completely reset. I have been thinking about it, and I've been updating you guys in my progress, but then I'd be taking a look at myself and thinking, wow, I'm not really progressing in the way that I thought I was. So how am I going to combat this? So for me, I'm going to black out social media and get myself right. I have already come up with plans, organizer charts. I did work with AI to kind of formulate a perfect chore chart to keep the house happy and healthy for 2 people throughout a 7-day work week. So if you're interested, I will try to make you one and link that down in the description. If you guys really are, just let me know down in the comments below. Upon my return, I will be hitting YouTube hard. I will be hitting all of my social media hard. I'm planning to completely restructure everything. It is one of those yearly resets that I do. Don't get alarmed, I'm okay, everything's fine. I'm just letting you know the plan for the channel. And don't forget that Boneyard is on all VOD platforms for you to still rent and buy, and you can still catch that there. There's also a whole bunch of trailers and endings explained and reviews all over YouTube, so feel free to check those out as well. So for now, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the comeback. Okay, guys? I love you all. Thanks for sticking it out with me, and I will see you after this break.